Alright, so there it is, our Fisher-Price baby rocker remover thing. A lot of controls on here for what it will do to rock the baby. It's all electrical. And we're going to show how this thing goes together. Relatively fast. It's 20 minutes to a half hour. It could take up to an hour, so don't feel bad if it does take up to an hour. But if it takes over an hour, it's because you're stupid. 20 minutes, half hour is about right. And we'll show how this all goes together. There is going to be some tricky stuff in the video. There's a few things that look right or look wrong, and it turns out it goes another way. So take a look at the finished product before you start the rest of the video. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the comment section below. We'll try to get those answered, and you'll watch a video. Now, I'm going to have a little bit of focus and darkness problem in some of this, but again, I'll be ready to answer your questions if you have some as the video progresses. Next up, Fisher-Price Cradle and Sling. Now, this thing, pretty much, you're going to assemble it in one room, carry it to another. It's not really a problem. This is metal plastic. I don't think there's any wood on this. Yeah, it's fairly popular, according to the owner. I'm estimating maybe a half hour to put this together. Might take a little over that. There is some stuff, but we're mostly snapped together. The bag of screws doesn't look very intimidating here. And we're going to show how this goes together. On unpacking it, be very careful. There is some stuff that's going to maybe look like garbage that isn't. So go through all your stuff. Put the garbage back in the box. If somebody wants to do the recycle, separate it later, that's great, but that's not our job. The other thing is, if you're putting a bunch of baby stuff together in a location, a box makes a great job site trash can. So we're going to get on with putting this thing together. Step one, put the dome on a mobile. Why it didn't come that way, I don't know. So that's step one in the instructions. Step two, we're going to put the feet on the legs. And these aren't really wheels, they're more like rubber pads to keep it from shifting around. And that's the next. So I'm putting the feet on. Basically, there's a hole here that it all goes on this one. It kind of looks like it has the curve coming off of it. The hole's only in one place. There's only one type of screw that even goes in that thing. You put it in, you line up the screw. I got to use both hands for it, but we'll tighten it down. You want to press on it when you're tightening it down. Don't go gorilla tight, but nice and firm. With these in place, you can kind of see how that's going to go. And then the next row, pretty much everything just kind of snaps on because of these little things, but you got to get some of that other packing material off in order to get the locking pieces to go. And it kind of goes together like some tent stakes and stuff. You see how one thing goes in the other thing. So we'll put the extensions on. All right, so getting this upper piece on here is a little bit of wrestling. This is permanently attached to one side, then swings up to go on the other side. You may have to flick this little thing down, undo this, and then get these uppers lined up before flipping that back up and putting it back in. That seemed to work better. It disconnected that. You notice that these pretty much only go one way, and so that's relatively simple. One of them has the power cords going through it, so we connect these, and the power goes up through the floor, or not really up through the floor, but on the lower. And so we'll spread these and kind of wrestle with them to reconnect that piece. But remember, it's very sticky to the floor because of those feet we put on. And I'll get that reattached. We'll go on to the next stage, which is the swing mount, which goes on with this. And we'll go on with that. One of the things you're going to see is these little collar type things. Some of the stuff locks on this way, others that way with these little screws, and they go in and they thread into that and tighten up. That's basically how that's made to work. And putting these in, we go tight, but we don't go gorilla tight with them. It can be a little tricky to line up, but not impossible. And one of the ways this whole thing's set up to tell the left from the right is they go at 90 degrees to each other. So that's kind of one of the ways you can tell the left from the right. Now, If you need to move this from room to room, one of the things you can do is you can undo this, and then it collapses, partially at least. And so you will hopefully that's alright, but hopefully you won't. We tighten those little things down, but we don't go gorilla tight with them. And you can see they go at 90 degrees to each other. And if you need to move this room to room, you just undo this, and then it goes. So what it is you may have seen me do it, flips downward. Well, we're going to flip that out here. The feet on this are very sticky, and so I'm going to have to set the camera down to set this up. It's a two-handed job. So that's it right there, and then whether you collapse it to move it someplace, it can be a little tricky. And then when you set those, just remember the feet are really sticky. So let's say on this wood floor, we're going to have to pick it up, move it around, wiggle it to get those feet to sit all four square again. But that's okay, it's the way the thing's kind of made. It's a little springy and wiggly moving. And the reason those feet are sticky like that is so, let's say it doesn't walk off the edge of a deck or something like that. So, of course, there's no guarantee against that. And we'll just be very careful when you put a child in this, but it's sticky that way so that it stays put. Next, we attach the sides to the child seat. They're relatively similar to each other. In fact, the top and the bottom aren't quite a match, though, so it's a left and right orientation on that. There should be some screws left that you would use the same screws. Next is attaching it to the arm assembly. Again, we got one of these little collar screw arrangements that is down underneath, and here you'll see that screw is partially into that. We're going to tighten that down. Okay, so putting the cradle assembly, you can see how the child's actually lying on their back when they're in this thing. It snaps onto the metal part, which is already in here, and then let's see here if you can see that screw right there. I set that into that part, and then we're going to tighten that down. It's not a snap-in. We're going to make sure that stays relatively secure when we tighten it down. Okay, so with that thing tightened down, it doesn't go gorilla tight, just like the upper one doesn't really go gorilla tight. And so we just put the cloth part on. Very fast assembly. If you're not stopping to make a video, this thing's 20 minutes to a half hour max. And we'll get the rest of it going here. So in telling the head and feet orientation, you got the little teddy bear thing in here. And this whole thing's made to be removable and washable. In the back, when it's brand new, it's harder to find these, but when it's been used a few times, you'll be able to tell. There's some slots for the little seatbelt parts to feed through, and so we feed those through on this end. It'll take both hands to feed the bottom through on the other lower set of slots, and we'll get this thing put in position. Alright, so on the underside of this are elastic loops that go onto the plastic tub. And they reach around, and then there's this little kind of frilly thing here, but we're going to show a little problem with that. Okay, so what that problem is, there's a hole here for this to pass through, but this doesn't Velcro out or separate out. And that had to do with a new and an old design on this thing, and you want to be able to get that whole bedding part out of there to wash it from time to time. If I make it where somebody's got to take a wrench to it to wash it from time to time, it's probably not going to get clean. So I'm putting straps underneath to hold that in place. All the buckles and seat belts are in place, but I'm not going to take that apart to rethread that and then make it where somebody's got to have a wrench and mechanical skill to take this off and wash it. So that's kind of how that's going to be. And we kind of straighten all this stuff out so it doesn't get tangled. Go with the final touches. One of the parts that I've had difficulty figuring out where it goes is this little hoop, which I'm hoping we don't have to have a bunch of stuff come apart and put it in, but I think it may go inside this somehow. Okay, I figured it out. It doesn't go down, it goes up. That's what the hoop goes through the rim of this thing. Snaps in place, and that's how that works. So for those who have the benefit of watching the entire video, you're going to catch that. I was working my way through the instructions, didn't make that clear until I turned the page.